I think a lot online has been picking up. Looking at, for example, the Jeskai decks around the time of the Pro Tour, they are mostly just Teferi decks, or maybe Crackling Drake Teferi decks. To now say, hey, I'm a 3 Teferi 4 Niv Mizzet deck, that certainly is an evolution.
Yes, yeah, even just tipping the scales, Zach Allen was one of the first players on that. Then we saw Adrian Sullivan win Grand Prix Milwaukee with 4 copies of Niv Mizzet.
Yeah. Both players starting off on Basic Island. For Jessup has a copy of Search for Azcanta you might go for here. Or rather, it's going to be Discovery.
A little bit less powerful than Search for Azcanta, but it kind of gets him going, gets some instants and sorceries from the graveyard for his Drakes.
So interestingly enough, Aaron, he actually had both available and is valuing this as the better setup play in the matchup.
I suppose this is the one that gives power to your Drakes, and honestly, with Search for Azcanta, the cards that you're finding are fairly anemic. You're finding removal spells and more cantrips with it.
Keeps both on top, plays Search, but now that is going to get hit by a negate, which is Spell Pierced. So some early counter fight wars fought over that Search. Actually, will load up the graveyard some for Andrew. 3 instants.
And that exchange, that might be explaining the sequencing here. The Discovery was very unlikely to catch a negate, and Jessup just had the Spell Pierce. That way you kind of roll that up. He has a dive down in hand that he wants to be able to use later to actually protect a creature he cares about.
And there is the Sailor of Means from Brian. Right on time on turn 3. Gets the treasure token.
And even shocks for it.
You wonder whether Stat Sailor will ever be worth the 2 damage on the way back.
Treasure token towards Niv Mizzet is a big deal in this matchup.
Andrew makes Enigma Drake. Currently 3 power on that one. He put a copy of Steam Vents into the graveyard.
Unfortunately, BBD will not be able to get an attack in with this Sailor Means.
No, the Drake is on blocking duty.
Actually, I suppose you probably do
can
shove
bluff
in
it,
because of Deafening Clarion.
Yeah, and Andrew,
right,
there you go. You got the bluff
is.
damage. It's not even a bluff. I think he actually has Clarion.
All right, well, no blocks. Definitely correct on Jessup's side.
Yeah. One of the things I was looking at Andrew's early play, because he knows he knows at this point Jeskai is a 4 Niv Mizzet deck, it feels like it's going to change the way he has to approach this matchup.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's not that much you can actually do to control that. The first thing you want to do, if you're at all able to, make sure you have Lethal Beacon Bolt for Niv Mizzet online when it comes down. Beyond that, though, you just have to win as quickly as possible. His main deck is geared in a way that helps him do that. There's 3 copies of Dive Down, 3 Spell Pierce, which can fight over removal spells on his Drakes.
In that sense, it makes me like cards like Discovery more than Search for Azcanta because their payoff is immediate. We see him go for another Discovery here, pumping now the Drake 2/4.
In the main deck configuration, there's really not that much that Azcanta the Sunken Ruin can actually find that's a huge payoff for you. It's just that one Beacon Bolt. Your Shocks, your Lava Coils, they don't amount to much.
Yeah.
Using Azcanta to find cantrips is a pretty slow burn.
Settle the Wreckage attempted on the attack from Brian, but Andrew ready with his 2nd copy of Spell Pierce. And add an insult to it, that means it's a 5th point of damage. But
Plus
Brian,
1.
Yeah. Puts him down to 13.
One thing that Search for Azcanta does do in the matchup is honestly just transforming into a mana source is a big deal if Jessup has a Niv Mizzet of his own.
2-headed giant, sealed spectacular.
5th land here for Brian with that treasure token. It could be Niv Mizzet, and it will be Niv Mizzet on turn 5 as you drew it up.
Yikes. This is a big check for Jessup to have that one of Beacon Bolt.
So he has Lava Coil, Dive Down, and Enigma Drake in hand. That's what it looks like.
Even if he's able to produce something like a Shock or a second Lava Coil, it's a big cost to target the Niv Mizzet. I suppose he has a good amount of power on the battlefield. The Niv couldn't clear the Drake if he did assemble that combination.
Yeah, right now, Andrew transforms into his enchantment into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin, counts up the graveyard. Looks like he still just has that 4, or rather 5, and he does have the Beacon Bolt for 5.
And the great thing about Beacon Bolt, it covered this Niv Mizzet, and the best that BBD can do in the next turn is 6th mana source, Niv Mizzet with no mana up. That Beacon Bolt will just jumpstart and cover that one too.
I think he drew it this turn. Because that wasn't there when we started.
Right.
Big pickup for Andrew. Brian draws the card, but he takes 6, goes to 7, loses the Niv Mizzet. And that's a 1 of here, and it was the 1 of Andrew needed.
Oh, absolutely. That's why you play it. He does see a lot of extra cards in this deck. We saw
Yeah.
Search Riskanta, a couple discoveries, but that was timely.
Because it's in the yard with Jumpstart, even another Niv Mizzet isn't going to stabilize this for Brian.
Right, and his dive down in hand will cover this Teferi.
Right, Teferi from Brian attempts a -3. Dive down protects the Drake, and now that's the 7th instant sorcery in the graveyard. That's going to be lethal.
Right.
Brian says, how many is that now? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Brian says, okay, well, that's going to be game 1. Andrew Jessup takes it.
Timely Beacon Bolt.
Absolutely. And so is it. Drake's taking game 1. Enigma Drake managing to get in enough damage before Brian can stabilize.
Right, we'll go to the sideboards here, see if Brian has any help. He's got an interesting mix of things here. Some proactive elements, some reactive elements. So there's 3 Legion War Boss, 3 Seal Away, 2 Ixalan's Bindings, 2 Invoke the Divine, 2 Star of Extinction, a Cleansing Nova, a Negate, and a Lyra Dawnbringer. I think in general, Lyra is the best card in the sideboard because you can't tag it with either Spell Pierce or Dive Down, and those are very essential parts of Jessup's strategy here. He has 3 main deck copies of both. So stuff that's a creature, specifically Lyra, is going to be a big deal. Legion War Boss is interesting, but you got to figure Jessup is leaving in some number of removal spells. Presumably, a couple shocks will be left over, though they can steal a game in the sideboard games. I've certainly lost to that one out of the board.
So the question is, do you think Brian wants to get a bit more proactive in this matchup? So that last game, he tried to be very reactive toward Enigma Drake. You know, first he tried to settle the wreckage. He was spell pierced. Then we had Niv Mizzet try to block it. That was beacon bolted. Then Teferi tried to tuck it away, and it was dive downed. It felt like Brian's reactive game plan was being met at every turn.
Yes.
Does pro action help him, or does he just have to keep hoping to get through that stuff?
You certainly want to bring in the most efficient reactive elements. The Seal Aways generally force dive down, not spell pierce, that sort of thing. Star of Extinction forces spell pierce on a gate, not dive down, so you can lean that way.
Right.
In general, though, he does want to be a bit more proactive. In game 1, the Niv Mizzet only had to worry about that 1 Beacon Bolt, though generally in this matchup, the sideboard is going to give the Drake's player access to more answers to Niv Mizzet.
Yeah. So now, speaking of sideboards then, on Andrew's side, he has a full playset of Raptor Hatchlings, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Fiery Cannonade, 2 Ral, Is It Viceroy? He has 2 treasure maps, none in the main, a 3rd copy of Niv Mizzet, a Star of Extinction, and a 2nd Beacon Bolt.
The Beacon Bolt and the Ral Is It Viceroy are definitely coming in. They're answers to Niv, Mizzet, and then if the Lyra comes in, they can cover that one in a pinch as long as you're able to keep ahead on having a graveyard stocked of instants and sorceries.
Right.
Treasure Map's a great value card in the matchup, like that one a lot. Niv Mizzet's honestly just excellent on both sides, so the 3rd copy, it's better in the mirror than it is against Jeskai, but it's still quite good here.
Disdainful Stroke counters Teferi and Karn, but not much else because it can't counter Niv Mizzet. Is it worth the slot?
I like it specifically because it counters Teferi. That card is probably the best card that BBD is playing that Jessup can't put in his deck. It can definitely seal up games if it just comes down. It also covers Ixalan's Binding if that's part of the equation post-sideboard. That card can be a real beating if you don't have access to dive down. If you get to one of your Drakes hit by Ixalan's Binding, or certainly your Niv Mizzet, that's going to cost you.
On StarCityGames.com, we have Star City Games Game Night. That's exclusive tokens given away as prizes at events all around the country. So, December, we've been giving away Bramble Hopper Elite, the 1/1 Elf Warrior. And we want to preview some of the ones from the upcoming months. Next month in January, we are going to have the Purdukin. This is our cat wizard here, throwing a little Hadouken over there.
I like it.
And then in February, we have Yeti Steady Go, 3/3 Beast token.
All right, that's more my speed.
You can find a game night near you at starcitygames.com/game night.
See, the Yeti was balancing something on
Yeti
its back,
Yeti
so it has to
steady
be
go.
steady before the Yeti can go. Steady also rhymes with Yeti.
It's a
lot going on there.
It's a racing thing. It's like the 3 lights.
I didn't hear the iteration Ready Steady Go until I was pretty old. It was always a Ready Set Go when I was growing up.
Yeah, it's like You know, rhyme. It's a rhyming thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just throw rhyme schemes in front of children.
No,
That
that's
leads you
that's
down.
actually
That's
what
asking
people
for-
do.
that's asking
That
for
is
trouble.
literally what you
asking
just
for
make
trouble.
everything rhyming.
That
Have you read a children's book?
not in a while.
Right. Andrew's on 6 here. Looks like it's a keep. He's got a copy of Niv Mizzet in his hand. Correction, he's on 5. So Niv Mizzet a great card. It's a little bit hard to make on a 5-card hand.
And definitely more true on his side of the matchup. He's just
Yeah.
the leaner deck.
Treasure map for Brian. Andrew tapped that. I was hoping for a Spell Pierce, but it's an opt.
Even Spell Pierce when you're on 5 cards, it's
Yeah, it's
not the biggest win.
pick up here from Andrew. He has a treasure map and a search for Escanta. He'll go for the search here while Brian's tapped out.
Presumably, if there's no third land available, that's the idea here. You get 2 looks, and then you can play and activate your map right away.
Well, some information about sideboarding. Brian has brought in Legion War Boss, and that's going to be the play here on turn 3. Getting in for 1 damage with that Goblin token and setting up to deal a whole lot more.
Honestly, it's frustrating to have that information for Jessup, because then you don't know if BBD has it going into Game 3, and your shocks are otherwise terrible
yeah.
on the matchup.
It's like you almost just didn't. Now you have to think about it.
Right. Oh, great. I've been given an opportunity to make a mistake. The Gathering.
Steam vents into Enigma Drake. It's a 1/4 for Andrew, but Legion War Boss will continue on in.
Yeah, and this is a situation where if that search for Escanta were a discovery, you'd like Andrew's position a lot better. But it's just a 1-power Enigma Drake that is not very good against the Legion War Boss.
Yeah, it'll clean up the Goblin token the War Boss makes this turn, or it would have if Brian didn't have Lava Coil at the ready.
Right. And this one's going to be closed up pretty quickly. You see the War Boss makes a Goblin, that, and the 2 Goblins come across. Mentor, Jessup at 10.
Now, Legion War Boss hasn't seen too much play since Guild of Ravnica.
I think
But
this is the
this is-
capacity that
yeah.
I've seen it see the most play in, out of the sideboard in Jeskai. It really hasn't shown in the red decks.
Yeah, I mean, in this sense, it feels a lot like a Goblin Rabble Master. It's this 3-drop. Okay, it's 2/2 for 3, but if you don't answer it, it will end the entire game on its own.
Yep.
Replacement Enigma Drake for Jessup. But even if he blocks the new Goblin token, he's still taking 5 to Brian's board as it stands.
Yeah, and there's just not much to be concerned about on BBD's side either, as Jessup is again tapping out for the Drake. There can't be a dive down. There can't be a Spell Pierce.
Yeah. New token into combat. Brian goes, swings the team, mentors on.
And I like this attack quite a lot.
Yeah, Andrew down to 4.
Pretty hard to lose from here.
And Karn, Scion of Urza. And one of the things I like about this deck, we even talked about this early on in the day, and we were saying the type of Jeskai I felt we were feeling was good for this weekend. I remember specifically saying, the kind of Brian Braun-Duin, Shaheen Sarani style Jeskai is doing really well. And then we watched this play out, and it is Brian Braun-Duin playing Brian Braun-Duin style Jeskai, and it's just, this is a great place to be here.
Right. And for Jessup, he's not going to have anything that can clean up that much damage, and we're going to Game 3.
A quick cleanup there on Brian's side. Legion War Boss getting it done. And now Andrew has to think about whether he wants to reach back for his sideboard. He's seen that out of Brian's side. So, removal. He has 2 Fiery Cannonades in his board that I'm sure weren't in the deck. And probably the big thing is he has some spot removal that he shocks or lava coils that he likely cut.
Right. Yeah, the Lava Coil I don't think really plays here meaningfully unless you specifically are expecting Crackling Drake from BBD. And you saw Sailor of Means. And it's tough to make room for that much of that category of card in a deck like this.
It answers Sailor Means.
You're right. It answers the part of Sailor of Means that doesn't matter to anybody. It did get in for a damage in there.
I believe it. I think it was even 2.
Multiple damage. All right. Well, we better get those coils ready. But I don't mind a couple copies of Shock.
Yeah.
It pushes through more damage with your Drakes, and it's a 1-mana spell with Niv Mizzet, so it's like a lightning bolt that draws a card in that scenario.
Yeah, so if he's cut some shocks, he can bring those back in. Otherwise, though, these like cannonades or lava coils are pretty out.
Yeah, specifically, Shock could combine if you're one spell off with your Beacon Bolt before Niv Mizzet come down. You know, you can Shock upstairs, that'll get you to your threshold, and then you can Rail or Beacon Bolt down the Niv Mizzet. Or if you're a long ways off, you Shock the Niv Mizzet and then Beacon Bolt it, which you'll go down some cards, but you at least solve Niv Mizzet, which threatens to win the game if your opponent ever untaps with it.
Okay.
So I think Shock plays the best of any of these options.
Can reach back for some of those if they had indeed come out.
To the invitational scorekeeper, please. Raj Kalamenti.
To me, Legion Warboss also feels a bit like a play on Brian's side, that he may be play draw dependent. A lot of times when you see that card out of a Jeskai deck, it does do that sort of thing. You know, the Geist of St. Traft or Monastery Mentor style Magic card.
Right. Yeah, proactive 3-mana creature. Plays a lot better on the play in these very few creature decks than it does on the draw. That much is certainly true. And honestly, if you get into a racing situation, on the play, turn 3 Enigma Drake is often just going to be faster than Legion Warboss. Even if you're just attacking with it, as long as you're spinning your tires adequately, getting power added to the Drake. The Warboss grows quite a bit slower than Goblin Rabblemaster did.
Now players here trying to make it to 7-0. Saw Brian win this matchup a couple rounds earlier today.
This one was definitely on his radar preparing for this tournament.
Yeah. I mean, these decks have almost gotten a lot closer to each other in the metagame. Jeskai and Izzet just in general. Izzet's gotten bigger. Jeskai has started cutting more of its white cards.
Well, I mean, Steam Vents is just the best land in Standard.
How do you feel about this Clifftop Retreat?
Less big on that one.
Turn to Discovery from Jessup, bins a Steam Vents. Both players trading off some lands early on. And it's going to be Treasure Map from Andrew Jessup.
That would be worth a negate if there were one available.
Opt from Brian. It looks like we have Spell Pierce, Dive Down, and Opt all in Andrew's hand. So a lot of things to do with that leftover mana.
Yeah. Over Opt, you probably activate the map.
Yeah.
But the Spell Pierce to fight over a negate there would have been pretty nice.
For 3 mana, we're going to see Legion Warboss again from Brian. So I called out 3.
I noticed you didn't mention Shock.
Yeah, I did not say Shock. I said a bunch of other 1-mana cards, and now Andrew's going to go digging. Is it going to be 2 times in a row that he gets faded out by this Legion Warboss plan?
Right. He'll get a few looks at it. He gets to use the map here, use the map on the upkeep, and then he has the Opt if he's looking for Shock here. Don't know how many copies would be available.
Draws Niv Mizzet. That's a great card, but still a ways off, as now here will come that Opt.
The Treasure Map accelerates that quite a lot. We could be looking at Niv Mizzet next turn.
Okay, so he makes land 4 here, taps the map, upkeep, taps the map a 3rd time. He'll have 4 mana untapped and 3 treasures.
Yeah,
okay.
You got to throw a lot of treasures at it, but Niv Mizzet's worth it.
And you have Niv Mizzet plus Dive Down.
Right.
You have the 1-2 punch. It's going to be Discovery from Anders. He's a land, and it looks like a blue cantrip. Yeah, he'll bin the Opt and the land and draw. Finds a 2nd Dive Down for his Niv Mizzet.
If only you could use Dive Down to destroy your opponent's creatures. It's not the kind of card that is.
But it's going to do the trick here. It'll be interesting on this next turn. Brian's hand outside of this Legion Warboss is lands and some pretty hefty stuff. He's got, looks like 2 copies of Niv Mizzet and a Teferi all in hand right now.
That's a lot of top end. Does not line up great against Jessup's hand here.
Yeah, the rest of Brian's hand are just lands to cast that Opt.
Now, the kind of thing he'd be looking for is if he had 2nd Legion Warboss here. He still gets a big swing.
Yeah, here is the swing. It's going to be for 5. Jessup drops to 14. He'll use a Treasure Map.
seems very likely that Jessup wants to spend this turn just casting Niv Mizzet and going from there. So the Scry is probably no longer looking for shock at this juncture.
Yeah. Chart a course picked up by Jessup. And here's going to be the third activation on Treasure Map. So it will scry 1, then transform into Treasure Cove. Andrew will get 3 treasure tokens.
Well, it looks like he's keeping another one on top.
Yeah, land tapped here, 3 treasures.
Get those Ryan Overturfs in and then get them right back out.
And yeah, leaving up 1, here is Niv Mizzet. Remember, we know 2. There's a dive down in Andrew's hand, which you can use for that treasure. And then when he untaps, he'll have a second one. And Brian's hand is 2 expansion explosions, a Niv Mizzet, a Teferi. A lot of big things, but and then some lands.
Yeah, so what he gets to do this turn is cast a fairy, try to minus on the Niv Mizzet, gets caught by that dive down. Then you see just what Jessup's able to do on the following turn. He did scry a Chart a Course to the top. That's good for 3 cards and 3 damage, and that's just the start of the turn. And there Teferi does come down. There's a dive down. Jessup draws a card. Takes care of the Goblin token that he can. Oh, no, he Spell Pierced Teferi. That's even better.
So now he gets to save 2 dive downs for the Niv Mizzet.
That's a lot of coverage. And he'll at least be going with that Chart a Course, so he'll be able to clean up the battlefield. You know, there goes the War Boss in combat. Those Goblin tokens are not long for this world.
No. Back to Andrew we go. He's at 10, but Niv Mizzet can start to stabilize pretty quickly here. Here's a draw of a card. It's going to deal 1 damage to 1 of the goblins. See his hand here, he's got Discovery.
Yeah, with BBD at 20, Jessup won't be able to cross the finish line this turn. So what he wants to do is clean up the battlefield here, make sure he leaves up mana for at least one of those dive downs, and then have a plan for BBD's potential Niv Mizzet on the following turn. Try to loot your way into either a Rail or a Beacon Bolt.
Niv Mizzet swings in. Now here is Chart a Course. 1, he draws a card off the sorcery, now deals a damage, now draws 2 more, deals 2 damage to the other Goblin token.
He found the Beacon Bolt, so I think he may have wrapped this one up.
Chart a Course plus Niv Mizzet's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Here's Crackling Drake. Here's some more damage. And yeah, showing off the power of Niv Mizzet Perun is Andrew Jessup right now.
Yep, dive down plus Beacon Bolt back up. Though, honestly, the second Niv Mizzet, if you're the player that's on that footing, you're generally already losing. But Jessup has, it could be like a Lyra Dawnbreaker in some situations. Jessup's got it all covered.
And Brian extends the hand, so it is Andrew Jessup with Is It Drakes picking up the win. Niv Mizzet carrying the way, and he is on to 7-0.
Really like this direction that Andrew Jessup and other players have taken the Is It Drakes deck. Just heavy on Niv Mizzet, 2 in the main deck, 3rd coming in out of the board. Yeah, the Jeskai players may have been the first to go down that road, playing the Niv Mizzet's the best card in Standard. Let's play a bunch of those, but the Drake deck doing a little bit better here, and Andrew Jessup is 7-0.
1 more to go here with those Niv Mizzets from Andrew Jessup. So, coming back booth, we are going to get a backup feature match here